Yo, we're back with another episode of the Football Chai podcast. And yeah, it's been, I think, a little over a month, which doesn't seem like that long, but it flew by in between like the World Cup and the start of the Premier League. Of course, the start of the Premier League was last week, and I didn't do a podcast then, but I was waiting for like the start of the all the European leagues or most of the European leagues, and we've got pretty much everything except for the Bundesliga starting this week. So I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to get it going, this week. And already, like, there's just so much shit to talk about. First of all, let's just start with the Premier League since it was already there a week ago. For starters, bloody hell, City beating Arsenal. It's like nothing has changed so far. United struggling to beat Leicester. They were terrible that game, but they got the result. And Mourinho apologists, as I like to call them, will say that at least we're getting the win, guys. At least we're getting the win. Who's the other manager who can replace him? In my answer to all of that is I don't give a fuck. We all started watching United under Ferguson, and yeah, sure, Fergie era is over. I'm not asking for them to play the way Fergie played, but at the same time, it's painful to watch this team with talent like Sanchez, Pogba, Martial, Rashford. Like, the names just roll off the tongue if you want to think about talent that United possess in the squad. Mata, Herrera, it's just ridiculous. I mean, even in defense, you got Bai. I mean, sure, we don't have enough. We don't have fullbacks. So United doesn't have fullbacks, but then it comes down to like overall management. Why is there a rift between the two? Anyway, that's old news. I don't want to get into a rant of United. I've already ranted about them too much in the past. But yeah, it just seems like it's the same old thing. Liverpool again look like they're going to be the closest challengers to City this year, and they looked really good. But what, and you know what, the Premier League is the Premier League. We can put a pin on that for a second. In terms of the big teams, like Spurs again, they started slowly last season. They're starting all right this season. I think they'll be competitive compared to the Arsenal and Chelsea, at least for now, because Arsenal and Chelsea have genuine teething problems that they got to go through. Spurs have just got to like use all their willpower to like keep them in pace for the first half of the season, and then when things work out post October, they'll be fine, I think. And that's why Spurs are going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on, because the new stadium, lack of signings, Poch, what he thinks about the club, blah 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 blah. Like, there's things we can look out for. But anyway, in the meantime, I want to talk about Fulham, Bournemouth, Wolves, and of course, obviously, West Ham, because these clubs are like, in my eyes, these clubs are going to be dark horses. And you can also put like Crystal Palace in that group, because Palace have held on to Hodgson, who I think is a good manager. He's an underrated manager. In fact, I rated him really badly after the Euros with England, but he's done what he was brought in to do, and he's done pretty well, man. And you got to give him credit where credit's due. And same with Palace. Like, Palace have got a good enough squad. They've got Max Meyer, who I think will um, add a new dimension to that squad in terms of the passing range. Like, he's a better version of Kabay. He's got more energy, and he can just spray those passes through to Zaha all day, every day, and Zaha will just eat them up. So Crystal Palace and a team I'm definitely going to keep my eye on. And then of course you got Wolves and Fulham, who like enough has already been said about them in the media, which is like the amount of money they've spent, the Jorge Mendes thing on one level, Ryan Sessegnon, and all this stuff. But all those reasons are reasons enough to keep an eye on them, because they've got like a very young, both both squads have are both squads are young and talented. They've got um, adventurous and brave managers, which you can't say about many of the clubs in the Premier League. United, and of course you've got Fulham have got like history in the Premier League. So do Wolves. Wolves are in it for like the long haul. They're looking to revolutionize uh, their side, and they want to be a challenger in Europe. You can see the vision for both the clubs just even for the amount of money they both spent off season. And Wolves had a great performance against Everton, I thought. Even though it was a 2-2 against 10 men, Everton are under Marco Silva. Of course, Everton. You got to put in Everton in in the mix of this. Because Marco Silva is like a really, really tactically astute manager, first of all, but he's also a guy who's a great motivator of his players, and you can just see that in the performance. Suddenly, like there was this willpower to Everton which they didn't have at all last season. There was this like belief that they're good enough. There was this belief that they could get a result, and I don't know. It's just going to be an interesting season to to watch for Everton as well. But at the same time, watching Wolves against Everton, I thought it was probably the most entertaining game of the Premier League the first week, and it showed like a character to both sides, which I think will help them both throughout the season. So Wolves, Everton, Fulham, and Bournemouth. I think because they made that last minute signing of Jefferson Lima at the deadline day, which I think is a great signing for them because they needed a young center midfielder apart from Lewis Cook who can play as a proper holding midfielder, and that's what he brings to them because Harry Arter, Andrew Sum, and all these guys like they don't have the legs to to like keep it going through the season. And Jefferson Lerma was a great signing for them. They've also got Eddie Howe, who again we're talking about characters like Marco Silva, Slaviša Jokanovic, and Nuno. But then you got Eddie Howe, who's just a staple now. He's the longest serving manager in the Premier League right now, which is a crazy stat to think about. And there's a reason he's stuck with Bournemouth because he really loves that club first of all, but he wants to be the figurehead that like takes them to the next level, which he's already done. He's consolidated them in the Premier League for the last 3 seasons. This season's going to be really, really tough for them, I think, because all the promoted teams, of the three promoted teams, I think two of them are going to stay up, Fulham and Wolves. Cardiff are my odds on to go down, like everyone think Cardiff's the ones to go down. But then, if you think about the relegation battle, you got Huddersfield, Southampton, Bournemouth. I would put Bournemouth in there, Burnley, and Watford. Burnley only because they've got Europe to also focus on, and then of course Newcastle. It's about 6 teams. Bournemouth and Newcastle, I'd say maybe not, and Watford as well. But then that just leaves three, which is Huddersfield, Cardiff, and Burnley. So it's a weird time, and I think it's going to be a really tough season for them. But they've got the right man in charge, and they've got like the unison in terms of their club vision. So it's going to be interesting to watch that also, and that's another thing I'm going to be keeping my eye on. And of course, finally, West Ham. I want to wrap up the Premier League quickly because I don't want to spend too much time here. But yeah, West Ham with Pellegrini and then the signings they've made. I don't think it's going to be a quick fix for them. I think it'll take time for them, like Arsenal, like Chelsea, to um, get into the flow of things. But for sure, they're gonna take their game up to the next level. They're gonna be on the same level as Everton and Leicester for sure. And then another season in, like next season, they could potentially be pushing for Champions League places. All these teams could potentially be pushing for Champions League places. So very, very, very cool time in the Premier League, especially just in terms of like managers, tactical battles, the kinds of quality on the play of players that are there. It's going to be really interesting. And then finally, quick word on this fixture of the week. Obviously, Chelsea, Arsenal, both new teams, new managers. I think it's going to be a Chelsea win because it's at Stamford Bridge, and I fucking love Sarri. I think Sarri is, going to revolutionize the Premier League um, in ways that we can't even imagine. And I'm super excited to watch this game. I won't be able to watch it tonight, but I'll be watching a rematch of it or whatever tomorrow. But that's my fixture of the week for the Premier League. And let's move on quickly to the Serie A and La Liga. First of all, let's talk the La Liga. Atletico. Atletico. I was listening to a podcast with James Horncastle on it, and he thinks that Atletico are the ones that are going to like they're his odds-on favorites for winning the for La Liga. I personally think it's going to be Barca again because, I mean, defending champions for one, they've got a more experienced squad than Atletico do, but it's clear that what Atletico are doing to the squad, they're in it to win it. They've had probably the best summer season so far. Um, Lemar 22, Gelson Martins 22, keeping Lucas Hernandez 23, 24, something like that. Keeping Griezmann still 27, 28. And then also signing Rodri to replace Gabby. Gabby was never good. He was just the typical Atletico player. Wasn't a good player. He was just the typical Atletico player, which is why he was in the team. Rodri is like 3 steps better than him, and he's also only like 22. This is a squad that they are setting up, if not to win the La Liga this season, at least next season. They're going to make a few season signings again next year. Definitely next season, they're going to go for the La Liga, but they're going to go for La Liga and Champions League this season. I don't think they'll be able to do both. I personally think their priority is going to be the Champions League because their rivals, all their biggest European rivals, are at their lowest, except for obviously Man City. Barca are rebuilding, and they have this like Barca's motivator for the Champions League is this sense of injustice that they feel, which comes from like we shouldn't have gone out the way we went out last season, so we got to make it up, and it comes from that's the motivation behind Barca's push for the Champions League this season, and it's a good motivation, and it also helps that Barcelona have signed some beautiful players this season. I'm super happy about Barca's off season, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But because of that being their primary motivator, and with Barca, it's not about just one trophy. Barca want to retain the La Liga. That's going without even saying. That doesn't have to be said. But handling two trophy pushes between the Copa del Rey, obviously, which they also gonna want to hold on, and challengers in the form of Atletico, of Man City in the Premier League, PSG obviously can't be written out, and Bayern, because Bayern have strengthened pretty well. They've got a new manager who's, again, tactically he's astute. He knows what he's doing. He can change things up. So there's a few competitors that Barca have to deal with, which, to be fair, to point out, and this has to be pointed out, Real didn't really have these competitors over the last few seasons. Liverpool, of course, are back in there. Like last season, I mean, it was, and Juve, of course. Like there's just so many sides that are going to be gunning for the Champions League, and the Barca is one of them. But I personally think Atletico, Bayern, Man City. Obviously, Real can't be ruled out. Real have to be in there. Barca, Juve are like the 6 teams, and PSG, of course, you want to throw them in there. There's like 7 teams who are genuine competitors for winning the Champions League this season, which is going to be fucking great to watch from just a fan's perspective. It's going to be hard as hell for me to take a loss if it comes down to that, but it's going to be just super an exciting season to watch, because I don't think it's been a while since we've had such a competitive Champions League. And Liverpool, of course, there you have your quarterfinal teams right there. You got Liverpool, Man City, Real, Atletico, Barca. That's 5. PSG, Bayern, and Juve. That's 8 teams right there. Inter aren't going to make it in they're not going to do like this. But there's so many competitive teams in the Champions League this season. They've all strengthened in places where they feel like they were lacking for that very reason. They want to win the Champions League, and I'm going to move away from Champions League really quickly to come back to La Liga, because La Liga is going to be exciting this year. Like Julen Lopetegui, I guess, is gonna face a huge test. He hasn't had to face a test like this on a club level at all. He didn't face it on an international level because he fucked off pretty much. He fucked off before he had the chance to. And of course, he is now managing one of the biggest, if not the biggest club in Europe. And the pressures that come with that are next level. I was speaking to one of my friends who's a Real fan, who is pretty pessimistic in his view of new signings coming in. Real, to be fair, I watched this Super League, the Super Copa, the Super Cup, the European Super Cup, and Atletico, yeah, they won it and they deserved to win it because they were clinical and they just looked more well drilled and they looked like they wanted it more. There was more desire in their game. But if you're watching the actual game, like Real didn't did not create chances for them. They did. They weren't clinical. That's it. They were dominant in possession, and they were pretty much like running the show on pure like adrenaline. You know, there's still stuff that needs to be tweaked to this Real side, which is why you won't be able to expect the best of Real Madrid until like mid-season, until January, which is what always happens anyway. Like Real for the past few seasons under Zidane, they've just been they just peak at the perfect time, which allows them to push for the Champions League and win it. And that's why you cannot, like with the professionals that they've got there, like Ramos and Varane, who's fucking 24 and won everything already. And of course, and then you got like Benzema and Bale and Isco, Asensio. Like these are experienced cats who've been there, they've done it all, they know exactly what's up, and it's just having that experience in the side cannot be counted out. So Real are going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on. I think it's going to be a three team push for the La Liga this season. Real, Barca, Atletico, obviously, and then just below them, there's going to be a super uh, um, competitive fucking battle for the fourth Champions League space, because you got Valencia, who qualified last season, who've strengthened well again. They've got a good young squad and a great manager. I love Valencia. Always love them. Super happy for them to be back in the Champions League. But you got Valencia, you got Sevilla, who got Pablo Makin, who Barca played, by the way, in the Supercopa de la Liga, which they looked good. Sevilla looked good. They were very good on the counter. They pressed when they had to, but they also sat back. They changed their formation up. There's a lot of different dimensions to Sevilla this season, and Pablo Makin did really well with Girona last season. And he's one of those managers who is smart in his tactics. He's flexible as well, and but at the same time he's also he's a guy who really believes in his team, his formation. So Sevilla's going to be there. Then you got Real Betis, of course, under Quique Setien, who probably play the most beautiful football in all of Europe. In fact, Xavi last season said that Betis, in fact, did play the most beautiful football in all of Europe last season. Quique Setien is basically like Pep Guardiola in that he's a control freak. He likes to go into the details of everything to a ridiculous extent. He pushes his players. He's a good motivator. Setien is such an underrated manager, and I think he's finally got the platform to get the recognition that he deserves on with Betis. And if Betis push, obviously we're talking today is Saturday, and Betis played last night, and they got humped at home by Levante. So obviously there's going to be a few teething problems, and we've seen this with Setien's teams before. They'll have good performances, but they'll also have really bad performances, and it's about whether they can fix those bad performances that's going to determine whether they can push for the Champions League. Because the Champions League, push is running a marathon. It's not a sprint. And Setien and Betis last season were like sprinting kind of teams. You know, they started all right. They started badly, in fact, and they were just kind of like hovering about throughout the relegation zone throughout the mid-season, and then they just sprinted towards the end and made that finish fifth. You know, but they can't. I don't think they can rely on that this season. So they're gonna have to like toughen up a bit. But you got Real Betis, then um, I'm not really sure if you can count any other teams for the Champions League specifically, but there are a few interesting teams that you can keep an eye on in La Liga this season. Obviously, there's like Celta, Villarreal, Sociedad. All these sides are like European caliber sides, and they've been European caliber sides for the past few seasons. So I don't know. La Liga is going to be super fucking interesting. I can't wait for that season. In fact, it's already started. Barca playing Alaves tomorrow, or well, tonight in Indian time. Real are playing Getafe Sunday night, Monday morning, and Valencia. But with this fixture of, actually, there's two fixtures. There's already one which is Arsenal Chelsea, which I've talked about. But there's two fixtures that are gonna blow Arsenal Chelsea out of the water. One is obviously, I think this is my fixture of the week segment. I guess I'm gonna add that as a segment. My fixture of the week is Valencia Atletico. It's gonna test Atletico in ways that they weren't tested against Real, because Real was still kind of like like a broken bone on its way to recovery. Whereas Valencia have had a full preseason with new players. They've got this renewed sense of energy to the club, and it's at the Mestalla. In the meantime, Atletico are gonna be just this side that what we come to expect from them. They're just this side that's not gonna catch the eye in many ways, but they're just gonna be there, do their business, and leave. And it's gonna be this like battle between this young, exciting, flair-filled squad with a manager who motivates his players really well and brings a lot of energy to his sides, versus this just like stout, resolute rock of a team that will counterpunch and like just attack and finish when they need to. So it's going to be like a battle of ideas. My heart is obviously going to be with Valencia in this match. Like Valencia have always been like, they've been my second team in La Liga ever since I can remember. Ever since like David Silva and David Villa were playing for them, and then Juan Mata and stuff. But yeah, that's my fixture of the week. But then if you move into Serie A, which we got to talk about really quickly, also because there's so much if I can talk about. First of all, big fixture, blah blah blah. We got to mention Chievo, Juve, blah blah blah. Who gives a fuck? Honestly, Ronaldo, blah blah. Personally, I don't think Juventus are gonna. Juventus is gonna walk to the Serie A title. Let's be real there. Then obviously there's. But I just find it. I think it would be hilarious if the first season Ronaldo is in Juventus, and after all that hype about him doing this and that, and Juve win Champions League, blah blah, they don't even win the Serie A. I don't think this is going to happen, but Inter have signed really, really, really fucking well. I think Roma are probably going to finish third. They haven't signed the caliber of players, and they haven't signed players with the intent to win Serie A. They've signed players with the intent to gain value out of their players, like fucking Kluivert, who I thought was a great signing, and just a few others like Nzonzi and stuff. Like, they're not title-winning players. They're just players to bring a little bit of depth and dimension to their squad and help push on like 2-3 different levels. But yeah, I think it's Juve winning the title. Anyway, let's talk quickly about this the fixture of the week in Serie A, which is Lazio Napoli. And the reason this is a really interesting fixture is because Lazio's entire year changed at the end, the last fixture last season, when they lost at home to Inter. And they can't have any problems with that because it was at home. They were a better team than Inter all of the season, and it was on them to just wrap up and win the win that fixture. Because a little bit of context: if who the winner of that match essentially qualified into the Champions League. And Inter beat Lazio and they qualified into the Champions League, which allowed them to spend a lot of money this season, bringing in Nangolan, Lautaro Martinez, a number of others. I can't really remember them off my head right now. But enough players with different qualities to their game that will allow them to uh, challenge at least for the cup. Like add enough depth that will allow them to push for a trophy this season. And Lazio's entire season depended on that, and the fact that they didn't make the Champions League just changed it. And now they don't have the money to sign big players. They had to sell one of their best players, Felipe Anderson. For a lot of money, but they sold him anyway. This summer. In the meantime, Napoli, despite finishing second with 92 fucking points, can never get over that. Lost an insane manager. They've got in Ancelotti, whose training style is the exact opposite of Sarri's and Guardiola's. You saw this in Bayern when Guardiola left and Ancelotti took over. It was easy. Like Bayern players initially were like, oh yo, we don't want this Guardiola style of training. But then when it came down to it, and Ancelotti would just sort of like reduce the intensity of training and let players do whatever they want. Players didn't like that either. So it's going to be a similar situation for Napoli, for Ancelotti and Napoli. The only difference is Napoli is not the same caliber of club as Bayern is. But at the same time, Napoli have made some good signings. Not as much as I thought they would, but they've kept Hamsik, they've kept Insigne, they've kept Mertens, they've kept Callejon, they've kept Milik. They've kept 5 of their best players. They've lost Jorginho, yes, but they've still kept Alan, who I think is very underrated. They've also signed Verdi. They've got Inglese back this season. They've got a lot of good players, and this is like a perfect mold of clay for Ancelotti to sort of like fuck with, and like build and sculpt into something that he really wants. And I feel like also this is Ancelotti's like personal mission for redemption after how badly things ended with Bayern. So it's going to be an interesting team to keep your eye on this season. I'm definitely going to keep. I love Napoli, so I'm always going to watch them. Definitely Lazio as well, even though I've had my like ups and downs with Lazio. I just generally love the Serie A. So the Serie A is going to be a fun league to watch because it's going to be as competitive, if not even more competitive than it was last season. And it was the most competitive league in all of Europe last season. So it's going to be super cool to watch. I'm fucking excited for European football to start again. Like the Premier League started last week, but the La Liga, the Serie A, like my weekends are pretty much done now. And at this point, it's just going to be great. Also, I'm done by the way. So just a quick bit of admin before I wrap up. I know I've gone a little over the amount of time I wanted to, but anyway, quick admin. Logo's done. This will probably be streaming on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just please fucking subscribe. If you're not interested in subscribing, share this with people who you think would be interested. I'm super serious about keeping this going all this season. Sooner or later, like there's gonna be guests, there's gonna be an iTunes subscription. But as of now, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Share it with friends, share it with whoever you want. Leave a few comments in the below. Yeah, thanks for listening, and yeah, peace.